Hey, so back again with another video on the Fluentd setup. In this one, I'm just going to go over how to set up Fluentd using a Docker Compose file, and then I'll also go over the Fluentd configuration file that's needed. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So the first step is to create a Fluentd Docker file. And the reason why we create a Docker file is that we need to use the base image of Fluentd that already exists and then install the required plugins for Elasticsearch because the base image for Fluentd does not contain the plugins that are required. So let's just go ahead and head over to the code, and then we'll create a Fluentd folder, and then we're going to go ahead and add in a file called Docker file. And then I already have that code written, so I'm just going to copy it from over here, and I'll paste it here, and then I'll explain. So we have that base image that is being pulled, and then we are switching to root user because if we're not root user, we're not able to use the gem command. It'll give you an error. So we switch to root user to be able to run these commands, and then after that we switch back to the Fluent user. So that's pretty much it for this file, and then once the file is created, we just go ahead and run this command to create the Docker image. So to break this command down, you have Docker to call the Docker, and then it's build and then -tag, and then we give it a name. So in this case, I've named it Fluentd-Elasticsearch, and I give it just a dot to say here in this current directory because that's where this Docker file has been defined. All right, so that's good. Everything ran perfectly, and you can verify that the image was created by just doing Docker images. And there you go. You can see that it's been created. Now I've been working on this project since yesterday, so it's already been created. So that now exists, and no modifications are needed to this file. So we're done with that. We'll head back over to our instructions. And all right. So our next thing to do is create a Fluentd configuration file and then set the configuration. So we want to be able to specify what the source should be, the input. And then we want to be able to specify the output as to where those files should go after they've been collected. So we'll go back over here, and inside this folder, we're going to create a file called fluent.conf. And you got to make sure you put the .conf because it's going to be looking for that when Fluentd spins up. So again, I already have some code pre-written, so go ahead and copy that over, and I'll explain. All right, so we have this source section up here. So I'm tailing a file that is in this directory, and this directory will be held locally on the Docker container, and I'll be using a volume in Docker to be able to store these logs. And then we have the position file. So this is just saying where Fluentd is at currently in reading the logs from this log file itself. So this is in case Fluentd stops. When it picks back up, it'll know where it last left off. So that's why that is needed. And then we have a tag field here. So any of the logs that are coming from this source are going to be tagged with apps.logs. And the parser section is needed whether or not you're using it. If you're not using it, you just put at type as none and leave it as is. So then this next section, I'm using it to filter out any of the logs that are like system logs for Fluentd, because initially when I was running it, I was getting system logs from the Fluentd logging, not the logs that I was actually consuming from app.log. And then once it passes through the filter, then it will look at a match action. So it's going to match based off of this tag that was given up here. And same thing for filter, it's matching based off of this tag that's here. And then I'm using the copy plugin, so it's going to copy whatever logs have come through, and then it's going to store it. So in this case, I've chosen the Elasticsearch plugin to be the storage, and then I defined the host name as Elasticsearch because the Elasticsearch host name will be defined later on in the Docker Compose file. and it's going to need to look for that host name that's been defined in the Docker Compose file. So I'm just setting it in advance. And then the port number, this number will be set in the Docker Compose file as well, but since I already know what I'm going to populate it with later on, I've already set it. And then the log stash format, I set it to true, so that way it will be the log name, whatever prefix I give it, and then it'll have the month, year, and day as the end part of it. So this is pretty much it for the Fluentd configuration file. I just kind of left it very basic so that I could just test it. I just was, putting everything with its bare minimum needs. So that's it for the Fluentd configuration file. The next part here is to create a Docker Compose file. So let's head back over here, and I'm going to put this Docker Compose file out in the configs file just because that's going to be used by other things. It's not going to be just for Fluentd. So, all right, so we got our Docker Compose file created, and I'm just going to take a snippet from here. All right, so yeah, so this is my Docker Compose definition for the Fluentd service. So you have services as the parent, and then everything that follows beneath it is going to be an individual service, and then its definition. So I have Fluentd as my service, and then I have my image being used that I generated earlier from this Docker file here. So I have Fluentd dash Elasticsearch being used as the image. And then I'm naming the container Fluentd, and then the host name Fluentd, and setting the ports. Then I'm also creating volumes. So I haven't created the volume yet. I'll create it later. But this volume here will be named log server, and then it's going to map to the Fluentd log that's actually in the Fluentd service. So the Fluentd service is going to have this path, and when you go to that path, it's going to lead to the log server volume that I have defined here. And then this here is binding between my local setup and then what's on the container within the service for Fluentd. So I'm going through my files here, and it's looking at Fluentd, and then it finds fluent.conf, has that file, and then it passes it on to the container path for Fluentd. So that's pretty much it for the Docker Compose. There's more details I have in there later, but they all kind of make more sense once you have it linked up to Elasticsearch and Kibana. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this step here. And then my next one, I'm going to go over Elasticsearch and Kibana together just because it's not too much more. So, yep, I'll see you in the next video.